do the next chapter on increasing LOD, I'll just have to mention that the IFC property set that you guys were looking at, and if you're not certain about the classes that are supported, you can always go on to our website, the help guide, to find the supported IFC classes, and all the, well, theoretically, all the BIM DB elements that you can specify in the TXT file can be exported to these various classes all down here. Alternatively, of course, you can find all these in your in the Building Smart website, but this is already quite a comprehensive list of what you can export to. And as for example, the classify, go on to classify, and classify as BIM element, not asking you to use this manually just yet, but this is where you can also get an idea of where the BIM DB elements are from. So BIM DB wall, BIM DB window, and if you're not sure about anything else, you can always drop them all down and make sure that you have got all the things tallied. So this is the right way to go for you. So yes, so let's begin. I'll just close this guy up and start the increasing LOD chapter. So as for the increasing LOD, first things first, before we actually start a new kind of drawing in BricsCAD, I'd like to quickly show you, go onto the C drive, make sure you have got the downloaded materials safely stored into your C drive, you know, program data. So go onto program data, you might find it hidden. So you can always go onto view, tick this hidden icon, program data, and navigate to Bricsys, and under support, BIM, you should be able to find details, BIM learning. Oh, sorry, not BIM learning. BIM learning is my learning, but you can save the new handout. Sorry, the materials from 24/7 that comes with the details, and you can save those details into the details folder over here. And this is where I would also navigate to in my settings to save and to extract any data that I may have, sorry, any details that I may have in BricsCAD. So with that all set, let us go on to a new drawing. Again, go on to your side panel here and navigate to your detail panel. So if I got my detail panel open here, I can't see details. There we go. That's the thing. I think I used the wrong one actually, sorry. I used the wrong BricsCAD. So BricsCAD BIM, detail. And of course, you can always find the details link, and you can link your folder into BricsCAD. You can do it by manage libraries. And this is where I save my stuff in. And you can always have your custom folders, but make sure your network path or your path is correctly referred to over here. So with that said, details panel, open up your second story, sorry, your second building, LOD. Let me just double check. Yep. And you should see this simple building, simple mid building over here. And what the page 57 tells you to do, page 57 on the PDF, if you're following through. And on the hard copy 56, it's asking us to turn on floor number 1. So this guy, and you can always go on to kit. So you're seeing a 3D view of your first story building, first story floor rather. You can always zoom into the wall connection, as they tell you. So it's telling me to zoom in between the wall front and the wall back, and it can be quite kind of misleading on the hard copy. So just let me explain that it's referring to the composition over here. So it's referring to the joints between these guys, which we will show you how to detail them automatically. So we go on to the open panel here, and you can always save, because naturally, if you were a kind of a detail savvy person, you will save all the details and hopefully reuse them through Propagate, and therefore you will start to amass a huge list of details. And what you would like is to have a search button. So over here, for this particular exercise, we will search for this particular junction. So it's ww_55 cavity brick gypsum.dwg. For those of you who are familiar with the detail panel in BricsCAD from the previous partner trainings, from the previous BricsCAD, you'll notice that there should be a thumbnail being generated either automatically if you have got it ticked or not. However, for this 0.05, we do acknowledge that there is a slight bug going on right now. So anything about generating the thumbnail may actually pop up a error dialog to say that there is an error of trying to read a thumbnail. So please bear with us with this little question mark. It shouldn't be the case. It's already being looked at. So I hope it's not going to happen in the next release of 0.07 if there is one coming. But unfortunately for 0.05, sorry, 0.06 in the future release. But as for now, the 0.05 has ironed out quite a few other bugs. Unfortunately, this one was not being addressed quite timely. So this is the one that we are looking for. It's a parameterized detail that has been provided for you in the folder ww_55, and it's got all the parameter settings all set. And we'll go through this later in more detail. And as for now, these are some of the tags that have been assigned to. So there are solid tags. It's come with references of compositions. So it's easy for a user to quickly go on and search for a necessary detail, maybe how a timber frame junction could be, a timber frame junction meeting a concrete foundation versus a blockwork foundation. That could be something that you save, but you wouldn't want to save everything all in your name like this. So you could actually create your .dwg details by simply naming them codes if you want to. If you have a very systematic standard, of course, not encouraging if you're not a tidy person, but you can always use your tags to basically collate them, almost like a librarian collecting and collating all the books and assigning them and storing them at a correct kind of a location, so you can always grab them whenever you need them. So you can choose. So I'm happy with this detail, and I'm going for Propagate. So what Propagate does, if you could remember from the previous training or your individual training or from the YouTube videos, webinars, etc., any other medium of knowledge that you might have encountered, the AI automatically comes out to scan the various junctions that this detail might be applicable for. So it's going to tell me that there are 10 places that I can consider having this detail. So it's a detail that if I could actually open up, because now the thumbnail is not really working, it's a detail that basically helps, first of all, seal up the blockwork there, the gypsum plasterboard that's stacking like this, which is butting correctly, insulation that is stacking as well like this, rather than giving a miter joint, because that's not a really neat way to do. But unfortunately, the cavity over here is also stacked instead of a union, which could be because of various reasons, and also a very unique kind of a miter brick joint. So this is, let's recognize this by this miter brick join in this case. And let's close this one. And you shouldn't be opening that quite often if you have got a thumbnail over here, but unfortunately not in our case. So another way to do so is also to click, drag and drop to activate the propagate. And what it's telling me now is that it's asking me whether I want all these 10 junctions to be of that same detail. Well, I can always untick them. You can do your option 2, which is basically to flip them, to mirror, because as you remember how the block work was stacked, so you might, for some reason, want this block work to extend all the way here rather than closing the butt joint over there. So it's all up to you how you want to play it, really. And maybe not over here. I'm slightly digressing from the main handout, but what the result should be the same, which is basically to tell us that here you go, you've got a miter joint, a miter brick joint and the stacking effect that you saw. Whereas over here, remember I crossed it, so I didn't want it to happen there. And over on this side, I've got it mirrored, so you can see this part is actually staggered towards the right, whereas this was staggered towards the left, because that was how I set the things earlier. And so on and so forth. So you can see it's a very handy tool if you have got a very consistent construction and you have a very standard detail that you like to, that an architect or a structural engineer would like to propagate through. This tool will come in really handy because we'll just produce this detail for once. And later on in the exercise, I'll tell you how to parametrize it so that you can use it in your future projects. So let's go on and create an advanced detail now that you know how propagate can actually work. You can also later on move into the main drawing to actually open up this bigger building. And also same thing, drag and drop if you like, and click yes if you want to. It's all up to you. But this obviously is a bigger building. It takes slightly more time. And also if you want to play with more checkboxes, etc., it's all up to you. But the same effect is still repeatable, which is to change the appropriate construction, or rather the appropriate joints to the desired kind of a detail that you want to. So here you go, this is something that you can play with. I'm saving this for the next breakout room session, and we'll quickly move on to how to create an advanced detail, because I think this propagate can be quite easy for you to understand, and you will do it, you'll have the chance to do it later on in the next breakout session. So for this next subchapter, which is to create an advanced detail, let us go to a drawing, second building, the one that we just did. And over here, you will notice there is a section pane already created for you. And all you have to do is go on to click. And you will notice that there are some bits and pieces. If you're familiar with construction, etc., you'll notice that there are some of the joints that don't really make sense because you have a gypsum plasterboard running down here, whereas the structures are not connecting, etc., etc., etc. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to create a detail to address this issue and then propagate it throughout this building. So you only do it once and correctly. First thing, select this little widget here you have, which is selecting faces. I always do this, and you have got another alternative, which is selection modes. and you make sure the value is 2. To me, it sounds a little too technical, so I just like to access through this little widget bar over here. It's always handy. And why is that handy? And that's because that would allow me to select specifically a pie face, which you wouldn't be able to if you hadn't had this turned on. And with this pie face, and depending on how you set your quad to pop out, so my quad pops out whenever I do my right click. So oops, that was a little too quick. Let me just select the pie again, pie face, right click, and what I want is a push pull, not this one, not the solid extrude. I'll explain to you later on why. If you are not convinced with using a quad at all, you can always go onto the ribbon and use the push pull button or other modified functions that you have over here. It's the same. It's just that the quad is a little more handy for myself. You might also realize the snap is not turned on, like in my case. So I always do an F3. And what I do want here is I want this slab to carry on all the way to my installation layer. So I have my block work sitting under my concrete slab, and then again another block work to continue right at the same height. So I have on this plane a thermally broken junction where it's being protected by the insulation. But we'll have a little kind of play. And let me turn off this selection of faces again. So why I turned it off is because I want to select this whole solid face. And now when I tap, I can't select the pie anymore because I do not have this one turned on. So yes, if you want to do anything with the pie like I did earlier, always remember have the selection mode turned on to 2. I avoided using the solid extrude earlier, and now I'm going to use it. And what it does is it's now creating a new solid, as opposed to pushing an existing solid through another solid. So right now, instead of me extending the wall in terms of height, I am giving it a new wall cap at 50 mil, and it's entirely a new solid over on this side. So with that said, if we follow closely to the handout material, we will also do another thing, which is to remove this external part of the plasterboard and also this external part of seemingly a blockwork wall, and also this region of the insulation layer. So what you can do is there is multiple ways of doing so, and maybe the first few times you might not get it right as well. But normally what I will try and do is that I will go on to select the faces and make sure I select that solid face. I'll hover around here and I'll do that. And what I've done is I select the solid face, I've done an extrude rather than a push pull. And in this case, what the extrude has done is subtracted that volume out, which I clearly don't want. And I think this is fine. Now, without the plasterboard that you had earlier, I am free to create an entirely new solid, which, if I turn this off again, that I can select entirely, and it stands entirely independent of the rest. Now, same thing here, I'll select the faces for the ease, and I want this face here to to push pull, because I want this to be of the same element, and this time to the edge of the insulation. And this is simply to replace that insulation, as you see in the handout material, if you follow it quite closely. So there you have it. You've got you've got 2 new solids and 2 modified faces of, or rather a wall and a roof. Now, let's put some materials onto this chat over here, and we navigate to concrete plane. If you have got too many compositions, you can always go on to show only to narrow down, but always just leave it on over here so you can have a full range of materials. Concrete plane, and you notice, I'm not sure if you can see it, but over on my side, I can see the hatches have changed. Instead from a hatch to the bubble of a reinforced concrete kind of a hatch. And also for this insulation block, let's go on to a supporting wall, cellular concrete. And let me just double click, and you should see this pattern replacing this diagonal hatch. Again, not sure if you can see it clearly, some of the dots, because my monitor is flashing at times when I'm sharing the screen, especially the edges sometimes. But I can see, I hope you're seeing it as well. I can see it maybe about 4 or 5 lines, and the rest are all populated with dots. So yeah, that's how you see if a material has been allocated material. You can always go down to properties, go on to composition, and yeah, see that you've allocated a new material for them. And let's do this for now for this breakout session. Have to play with the propagate detail, and also I hope you have also followed me, and if not, maybe we can create this little detail so that we can move on to the next bit of the chapter. And again, do apologize for the generate thumbnail, but it's something that we are looking at already, and if we could try and avoid clicking on that, because that might actually generate some error dialogues which are not really helpful in terms of our training. So yes, see you at the breakup sessions. Thank you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the main session. Let me just quickly reshare my screen and resume where we were after the subchapter of number 3, creating advanced detail. We'll move on to page 59 of the PDF, hard copy 58, which is the save details in the details panel. So now we have got the desired detail that we want. It was something that we created minutes ago, and we would like to create and save this detail for future use or for further use. So once you're happy with this, this was literally the one that we just did earlier. We do a BIM create detail in the command line. Let the prompt do the job. So I won't have to type the entire thing. And it's prompting me to select the reference solid, detail entities, and sections. One thing that, one little habit that we like to do is to make sure we have the names all typed out nicely. Maybe I should say rooftop detail example, and over in this case, BIM learning, because it's learning on my folder. It's learning for myself. You can, if you're confident, you can always save in some other folders that you may have. If you want a new folder, carry on, delete this, and you type your own new folder if you like to. But if you have a drop down, it's nice to have it on your side, so you can quickly select the folder you wish to have. So you know the name, you know where it's going to save. Now you need to determine what solids you would like to have it saved. So let's go for the reference solid. So pick reference solids, click this one, and what reference solid mean in this case is referring to the original solids used to create this construction detail. And in our case, that is the roof slab and the exterior wall. So roof slab and exterior wall. When you're happy, hit space or hit enter. You notice that this is like a traffic light system. It only works when you have all green and not when you have a red. Detail entities, this refers to any of the new stuff, any of the new solids that you've created during this little detail exercise. So obviously we first did the wall cap, if you remember, and also we introduced this so-called insulation block to replace the existing block work, the gypsum board, and bits and pieces of this back insulation back. So there is a thermal bridge. So 2 solids, it's telling me there's 2 over here. So if you have a detail which might be a little bit more complicated than this, and you have multiple kind of details to select, be sure to select them and double check that you have the right count over here. Once you're happy, do it as well, space or enter, you get 2 over here, and pick section, which is the last bit, and it's basically asking you where would you like it to be cut. So we designed this detail using this section, and it will be best for you to select the same section plane that we have got it open. Once you're done, click create detail. And what we just did was it zoomed straight into this detail, highlighting what we've just selected in purple. And you can see this region over here, which you can also modify it if you think you need a larger space, because you might have some surrounding elements that might affect how you would like to propagate your detail in the future. So you also have to think about future-proofing this detail such that you can use it in other scenarios, in other projects, and not simply in a project that has been modeled exactly or very similar to the way that is shown over here in this example model. So when you're happy, simply click on accept or enter, and it will prompt you to have this little thumbnail. So this little thumbnail was mainly why in the previous part section that I had to explain that there was a bug going on when you try and modify this little thumbnail. And by default, it's giving me this view so that when you navigate in your details panel, you know which detail you're actually trying to replicate or you're trying to propagate. If you don't like this view, for example, it might be quite tricky for a layman to understand detail, that you would like to navigate it to show simply how it looks in the 2D section rather than the 3D section as it is. You simply click on this, but I'm avoiding clicking this because this will later on lead to the bug that I have been talking about. So when you have this detail over here, now you can create some new new tags. And these tags were similar to the ones that I described earlier, which is to basically help you file your details nicely in your detail library, such that you can always type. When you search, you don't have to always type this detail example, rooftop detail example .dwg in order to find this particular detail, because you might have 20 other rooftop detail examples. It might be something that doesn't relate to a parapet wall, or maybe it's something that has got no wall cap. It may be a coping stone on top. But in this case, I think my distinctive feature is the wall cap here. So you can click add, and anything that's custom that you've made yourself and something that's not been populated by the AI in BricsCAD. So all these blue are by default simply telling you the basic parameters that this is being associated with. It's solid, it's roof, of course it's roof because we've got the roof, it's got a wall, and what the compositions are. So BricsCAD, it's partly smart in a way that it's classified all these quite nicely, so you can always find them using the tags, but you might want to look out for more details so you can easily narrow down when you want to find this particular one. So in this case, I might want you to say a wide insulation block as well, because this is a distinct feature that I think is unique in this detail and makes it easy for me to search and look out for next time. I know this is digressing a little bit from the main handout material, but this is something that you can play with later on in the breakout room as well. Once you're done, click save. navigate back to the detail and remember, just go back here, wall cap. So I have a couple of wall caps in. I'll just close this guy, close this guy. BIM learning, rooftop. Oh, bear with me a second. It seems like it had not saved properly in the BIM learning. Oh. Huh. This is weird. Let's try again. So again, BIM create detail. I do apologize. So rooftop detail test 2, for example.
Hey Ken, this is Julie.
Yeah.
I think that's unfortunately
Hi,
part of the same bug, that it's
okay.
not going to see that detail unless you close down BricsCAD and restart it.
I see. Okay. Oh, so you have this bug, and the only way for you was to close the entire BricsCAD.
Correct. So
I see.
it's
Well,
a
thanks,
little
Julie.
difficult for training.
It certainly is. Yeah. It was something I didn't encounter when I.
Sorry, if you haven't generated anything yet, it might let you do it the first time without giving you. So if you do generate now, it might not give you an error. It's just gonna. It did. Okay.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but either way, you won't be able to see it. It's due to that.
I see. I see. This was my first time encountering this, by the way. So it's yeah, it was something new. But as you can see, it's saved over here in the BIM detail example. Let me just quickly open if I could. And it was the one that we just created earlier, the hatches and things. But by the way, thanks Julie, thanks Melissa. It was something even for myself I did not encounter during my my rehearsals and my training privately. So yes, it did catch me off guard for a second or so. But as you can see, it was saved correctly. It was just a detail panel that wasn't showing correctly. It worked pretty fine early this morning with the rooftop test that I did for myself. So yes, it's intermittent. It is a hit and miss, but it's something that you perhaps might be able to avoid during your breakout sessions later on. So in that case, let us save this and hope for the best that when I restart my BricsCAD, that this is not going to happen again. So I'll save that _2 just to make sure we are using the same example. And that was the rooftop detail example that I did earlier. So let me just close him. Fire up 0.5 again. _2, let's open it. And there you have it. Well, thanks Julie, thanks Melissa. Yes, you're right, restarting it works this time, but yes, it was my first time encountering this one. I thought it was just the thumbnails that it was playing tricks on my computer. But this is the rooftop detail example that we have. And unfortunately, if you are going to try it in your breakout rooms later on, this is a procedure that you have to follow in order to get your own detail to pop up in the panels on the left. So with that said, let's double click on this and imagine you should have a thumbnail over here. And what we want to do now is to parametrize it. So what parametrizing means is that you're trying to give it more controls, but very specific controls over, say, the thickness, the distances of the plies, the variations of how things are, because not every project may have the same ply or may have the same thickness of the plies and the solids themselves. So you want to make sure you want to future-proof this detail for future use and not just being a simple one-off. So with the Parametrize, you will enter this drawing, and what you can do is go onto the mechanical browser, and because when we click on the Parametrize button earlier, it's auto constraint or auto parametrize and it's given all the constraints, parameters that the AI thinks is relevant. And I think it's quite relevant. It's given me the thickness of the pies broken down over here. So roof pie 0 referring to the top bit, and the 3 being the last. If you don't know anything, you can always click animate, and you can see the thickness of the slat being animated over here. If you do the pie 0, it should be the top bit over here that's varying in thickness. And same goes for the rest over there. What you can do is you can animate the angle, and all these numbers generate quite differently. So you might find them quite different from what you see in the handouts. So you don't have to follow word for word in the handouts. If the handout says it's digit number 32, it may be 48 in my instance over here. And it works the same because it's referring basically to the same thing. Again, now that we know what's what, we have to constrain them. We have to constrain them so things don't go too wide or too thin, which basically defeats the purpose of propagating the detail in other projects. Likewise, let's go on to select faces or selection modes equals to 2, value 2. And also do make sure that the value of your boundary detection is 0 or turned off, because you don't really want to turn on, you don't really want to highlight the boundaries and accidentally constrain them. So what we want to do now is we want this installation block to sit, we want this wall cap to sit nicely on this installation block, meaning their shared surfaces over here should be touching each other. They should be, in fact, locked against each other. So what you can do, you can simply tap solid face, and naturally it's asking me if that other orange, if you can see towards the left, it's the face that I want. So yes, I would like to have that one as well. And solid face 2 counts. Go on the constraint, and you should select this coincident constraint. Alternatively, you can do all these things in the ribbon up here. So these are the tools that you should be looking out for if you're quite against using the quad in this exercise, which is quite understandable because the quad may be slightly different from your workflow with my workflow. Now, we know that in any instance, these 2 elements are going to stick together almost as one object. So they will have a shared surface that they'll be close together at 0, actually. And we also would like to specify the thickness of the wall cap to be at 50 mil. So it's currently at 50 mil, and I don't think I want it to end up any thicker, or BricsCAD might think it's okay to be thicker, because I think 50 it's thick enough for most of the details that I'll be propagating to. And another one which I think we need to propagate, and that is this face, which is the underside of this installation block, and together with, if I could tap again, so I am selecting this guy instead of that guy, is, oh, there you go. Sometimes my trigger finger is not helping me. Is to make sure I have the same distance. I'll now just demonstrate to you using the ribbon. Again, 355, which is what I want. I'll click enter. So there you have it. You should find these kind of distances that we did. So distance 13, you can always rename them if you want to, but for this exercise, it's a simple one, so we're not going to do it. So 355, that's the height of the installation block, the floor slat, and the shared surface. You can always find them back in the mechanical browser or if you're familiar with the parameters and constraint panel. Now, let's zoom out a little bit and play with the angle. So this time around, when I animate this angle, I should find that these heights that we've done will be fixed, whilst everything else will move. And that's what I really want. And you'll notice that these are parallel to the horizon. So if in any case that I have another separate project where my roof is at an angle of, say, 10 degrees or something, Propagate will also work on this detail. I mean, Propagate will still work by bringing this detail to that particular project with a pitch roof. So these are some of the controls that you can obviously specify in BricsCAD through the parameters and through the constraints that we just did. So again, now we are done. We can go on to, we've animated the angles. I think we are okay. We can turn off the faces just in case I do anything funny, and also go on to your thickness tolerance, which should be 100. So what the thickness tolerance do is that it will accept things not specifically to apply, but in most cases, areas where they think at 100 mil, within 100 mil range, they will automatically fit this detail to that particular part of the model that you may have, because in different projects, you may have a different composition, which means you have a different thickness. Once okay, click save, and you can close it. And again, because we can't see the changes over here in the thumbnail, what we can do as a workaround now is to make sure that this has been saved, the timestamp is correct, and this was when I left the model. So this should have been the view that I had over here, but not in this case. So yeah, so now that we are happy with this, we can actually try and propagate these other areas. These are the corners of the building. And just simply click and drag and drop, sorry. And you will notice that it's prompting me to go out for these other areas. It's giving me a question mark. And if you could remember in the basic training or in your previous training, you know that that is because BricsCAD is smart enough to detect there might be a duplicate. And I'll give you a question mark because it wants a manual prompt to ask you whether you want to accept it or simply reject it. But we know that we've done the detail over here. So have we done this green tick, it will just simply do a duplicate or even make it worse. So no, it's going to be cross, and the rest green. Simply apply. And remember, we did our detail over here. You notice that it's the same detail over here. And you can also let me do another section here. And it's also repeated over here. That little wall cap over here. Yes, some of the joints may not be exactly nice, but these are easy fixes. But there you go, that saves you a lot of time, more than you having to redraw everything from scratch. Let's go on to this one. What I want to show you is because this model was slightly different from the previous one because of the angled roof that I mentioned about. Again, do this, drag and drop. That to me is the easiest way to propagate a detail. And it seems like it's detecting all the surfaces that we need. Applying all 7. And yes, let us draw a section report. And you can see, even at an angle, it's working fine. These lines are parallel because we specify a distance of 355, you remember. These lines are parallel as well because we specify a fixed distance of 50. And these two planes are coinciding. They're basically sitting one on top of another. And that's really important because that's what I want. And in this case, same thing. So you are not, you are basically controlling how this angle would work. Because if you had not done those constraints, you might find this not appearing as smooth as you think it would be, and possibly even not, BricsCAD not able to propagate the detail because you've not given it the right thickness tolerance and perhaps the angle tolerance as well. So there you have it. This is how you actually propagate your own parameterized detail. Hope you enjoyed it, and let us break for a 6-minute session in the breakout room. Have a go at it, and do remember to save an individual file so that you can close BricsCAD and reopen it to have a chance to drag and drop this defect sample from